Welcome back. The last 2 years have taught us a lot. Travel changed forever, and so did the way we think about Canadian history. And there's still so much we need to learn about our past.
Our next guest is here with trip ideas that combine education with your next vacation. Always a pleasure to be joined by National Geographic's Heather Greenwood-Davis. Welcome back, Heather.
Hi, great to see you guys.
So today we're covering sustainable travel, and when most people hear that, including me, they think it's all about being eco-friendly, but you say it's more than just that. How so?
Well, you're right, Jess, that it is definitely about the environment and nature and taking care of the planet. But as part of that, we also have to take care of the people. So we want to make sure that we're supporting and respecting the communities in the places where we travel. And so the places I want to share with you today are all places that allow us to do that and to learn as we explore.
Well, there is no question that now more than ever, Canadians are diving deeper into Indigenous history. And there are so many Indigenous offerings to consider, but which ones are you highlighting for us today?
Yeah, you're right. So a lot of the Indigenous offerings we typically think of are in British Columbia or in the Northern Territories. But of course, Indigenous history affects everywhere across the country. And one of the places I think we can look is right here in Ontario. So in Niagara, there is a tour that launched in September. It's relaunching in the spring as they retool. It's the Indigenous Niagara Living Museum Tour. And what they do, this is the area's first guided Indigenous tourism operation in the region. So you're going to get insight into some of the places across the region that have some history to share. And I think it's something we all should be looking at. Another spot we want to think about is in Ottawa. So there is an Indigenous walking art tour in Ottawa. It's about 2 hours long. It's led by a Métis Cree man, and he is taking you to spots across Ottawa, City Hall, Confederation Park, places that you've probably visited and maybe never really considered the Indigenous connection.
That's my favorite. I love that kind of thing, so I'm definitely going to Ottawa to do that. Now, Heather, we hear a lot about cowboy culture in Canada, especially, of course, in the prairies. But you say people may not realize that cowboy history doesn't have to exclude other cultures. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think when most of us think about Canadian cowboys, we probably envision a white man, but John Ware was not that. John Ware was a former slave, an enslaved man, a Black man who was a cowboy in Alberta and left an incredible history. There are buildings named after him, there are creeks, there are trails, and it's just a fantastic way to rethink our cowboy culture. There's a film by the National Film Board that actually looks at his life. It's John Ware Reclaimed, so that's a good place to start. And then maybe head to Dinosaur Provincial Park, where the John Ware cabin is. So that cabin allows you to walk in, you can explore. He spent the last 3 years of his life there, so you're going to see the artifacts and exhibits. And another stop while you're in Alberta, try the Bayou Ranch National Historic Site. So they've got lots of information there, as well as that's one of the places where he honed his craft, breaking in wild horses.
Well, that's another example, Heather, of how, our history books didn't exactly tell the whole story of who the heroes and the outlaws were, and the full breadth of it. So that is so interesting. And next, we're heading further west with a story that many Canadians may not have heard, the story of Komagata Maru. Will you share it with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Komagata Maru story is actually a tragic part of our history and, frankly, a very embarrassing part of our history. You can start learning about it at the Sikh Museum in British Columbia. It's a great place to start. But it's essentially about a ship that arrived on the shores of British Columbia carrying British subjects. They were Sikh, they were Muslim, they were Hindu. They came on this boat seeking a better life in Canada, and we turned them away. They were on the shores for about 2 months, and by the time they finally turned around and went back to India, about 20 people had died. It's just a terrible, terrible story. But I think it's one, our federal government apologized for it in 2016, which is a start, but I think learning about it is the next step. So when you're in BC, you can absolutely see that. That's an exhibit that's going until March 2022, but you can also look right here at home. So in Mississauga, there's the Sikh Heritage Museum you can explore. In Eastern Canada, check out the Pier 21 has an exhibit. And in Winnipeg, the Canadian Museum of Human Rights also has an exhibit.
Now, Heather, there's another group of people that often get overlooked by our history books, and they are the Japanese Canadians who were interred right here in this country during the 40s. Can you share some more about that?
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I did learn a little bit about this when I was in school.
Yeah.
My kids, however, learned nothing. So I think it's another example of a history that it's important that we learn about so that we can share it and make sure that this type of atrocity is never repeated. So the Japanese internment happened in and around World War II. You can learn about it in Laszlo, BC, at the Langham. Actually, excuse me, it's Abbotsford, BC, at the Langham Museum. There's a Japanese exhibit there in Cultural Center. You can also check out the Nikkei Internment Memorial Center in British Columbia. And basically, the story of internment of Japanese Canadians is that they were removed from their home. 90% of Japanese Canadians in British Columbia at the time were interned in camps, and those who fought back, refused, were sent to POW camps. So it's an absolutely atrocious part of our history, and one that it's really important that we make sure we don't forget.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And finally, you're going to share some Caribbean history in Eastern Canada that might surprise people.
Yeah, so I think people won't be surprised, I hope, to learn that there was a strong Black population in Eastern Canada. Africville, we often hear about Africville, which was a community that was actually raised in the 60s. Families lost their livelihoods, their homes, and the Africville Museum is there. So you can actually stand inside a replica of a church that once stood in the community and learn about Africville. But there's also a Caribbean connection that you can explore. And the place to go for that is the Black Cultural Center of Nova Scotia, where you're going to learn that Caribbean people first arrived in Nova Scotia in 1796. Listen, this is fairly new to me, long before the immigration waves we think of in the 1960s and 70s. And the first Caribbean people to come there were Jamaican Maroons, who were rebels that had fought the British and had come to Canada. And they stayed for about 4 years and then found it was too cold and left. Who can't relate to that? And then they were followed in the 1800s by more Jamaicans and also some Bajans. And the rest, as they say, Canadian history, right?
Oh my gosh, Heather, you're so great. We love having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing these educational ideas.
Thanks for having me, as always. Love seeing you guys.
And for more information on all of today's Canadian destinations, head to our social media accounts after the show. But don't go anywhere, because we'll be right back.